Welcome to Perusing's Appraisers on Purpose podcast. Our podcast showcases inspiring appraisers and professionals from the industry who are leaders in their field. How did they get to where they are? What have they learned along the way? What can we learn from them? Your host is real estate investor, entrepreneur, and appraiser, Michael Hobbs.
Welcome to another exciting, informative, and engaging episode of Perusing's Appraisers on Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Michael Hobbs, and I'm excited to have, the almost always famous Charles Baker with us. Charles, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Michael, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation. You and I go way back to LDAC days, and I've been following your career for a long time, and I'm a fan. Let's put it that way.
Hey, it's mutual. We have man crushes going on here. This is good stuff. Love this kind of thing. Friends, as you can tell, this is going to be one of those extra special podcast episodes, and I need you to do what only you can do, and that is you need to crush that subscribe button and definitely like it as well, because you send the signal that we love Charles, is what it's all about. Yeah, we love Perusings too, but we love Charles. And Charles, we want to know, hey, were you born this way, or how did you get into the appraisal and valuation profession?
Okay, everyone has a story, and here's mine. I'll give you the 30-second version of it.
Now, take a couple minutes, man. These are good.
Out of high school, I had dreams of being a rock star. So this is like in the 80s, way back, I joined a band.
Like real music with like guitars and big hair.
Songwriter, we performed all over LA. I was also going to school at the same time. So I had a job playing in a band, going to school. I was working at a 1-hour photo lab. Okay. Remember those? And we had a very busy lab in Sherman Oaks, California. And we would have people come and bring their photos in. Appraisers. We had quite a few appraisers. We had folks from Great Western Bank, First Interstate Bank, Crocker Bank, some fee shops that would bring their film in. I don't know how old I was. I was 19, 20. I was trying to figure this out. And I started becoming friends with some of these people. And I said, what are you doing? We're appraisers. Okay, tell me more. I want to learn about this business. So finally, there was a gentleman that used to come in from Beverly Hills, drop his film off, and we talked about it. He was getting out of the business. I wanted to get into the business. I took some classes.
Wait, what? You were a rock star. You were living the life. I've seen those videos on MTV. That was you, Charles Baker.
We weren't there. We were not there yet. We had a small little distribution deal. We had an album. We played all over LA, and it was fun for about 4 or 5 years. But it was also hard work. You have no idea what goes into getting a band, all those creative juices flowing, and writing and producing music, and trying to be relevant and keep up on technology, promote yourself, deal with the attorneys, and get bookings and sell tickets and promote, and late night flyering all over town. We did all that stuff, but it was hard work. And then times changed. It was like, okay, time to get serious about life. So that's what I did. I got into the appraisal business pretty much just by hook and by crook, and started doing appraisals, working with this gentleman. He trained me.
You mean the guy in BH? So you literally meet a guy. There's a lot of places in the world you can meet somebody to do appraisal, but you meet a dude in BH is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Just for people that they know the reference to Beverly Hills, but they may not really know, could you just give them a sense of just how disproportionate the housing stock is in Beverly Hills compared to the rest of the world for getting?
Well, it's funny because I did go to school in Beverly Hills for a couple of years, and I used to take the school bus over the hill from our place in Studio City over the hills in Beverly Hills. So I grew up.
Oh my gosh!
Absorbing that difference. Yeah. We had a decent house, but we go into Beverly Hills, and we're surrounded by mansions on the way down. It didn't really register with me, but as an appraiser, I really got it. It's quite a community. There's a lot of wealth there. There's also a lot of perceived wealth. A lot of folks that really maybe are in over their heads, trying to project a sense of wealth and prosperity. Maybe it's a little. And I've met those people as well. And the architecture is amazing. Yeah. People are fascinating, and I found a lot of fascinating people in some of these higher end communities. Mm-hmm. And appraising some of these mansions that you see on TV. $1 million listing. Anyway, I know a lot of those brokers. I've appraised their personal residences. You walk into a house like this, you just have to pick your jaw off the floor and do your job. Yeah. We're appraisers. We're not there to gawk.
Yeah, you can't be starstruck, or if you can, it's got to be real short. You got to be back in.
Keep it inside. Okay, this is a house that was once done by Barbra Streisand or Michael Jackson, which I've done both. You just put that aside, you do your job, and it's been a really interesting arc in my career.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's how I got started.
So you get started because this gentleman, like himself, is coming to the fast photo place, and you pick up a conversation with him.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And he could see that I had some level of interest and intelligence, and I was eager to learn. So he took me aside, and he ended up retiring, and I took over his practice after about a year. Yeah.
Oh, no kidding. That's fantastic. So you, and for people, we'll say of our generation, because they do think we're just barely out of our 20s. But what decade are we talking about here?
Right. In terms of year, this would have been 1988 when I first got into the business. Took my first course, pre-licensing, hang your
pre-licensing.
Licensing. And I joined the Society of Real Estate Appraisers in 1990.
Wow. Okay.
Prior to the society and the institute merging. Decided to go with the society because they catered to the residential appraiser a little bit more. Continued to take classes. 92 licensing rolls around. Boom, I'm in. I get my license. I'm in the first 5,000 licenses. Now we're up to 40,000 statewide in California.
Amazing.
And I stayed on as a candidate for the society. Then I became affiliated with the institute. Finally, got designated in 2008.
Oh, okay.
And the arc has just continued in a very positive, fulfilling direction ever since then. Amazing. In the intervening years, I was a review appraiser for a company called Foster Owsley, and later Greg Hansen's company, San Diego, LSI, based out of Pittsburgh, I think. It was a real good boot camp experience to review other people's work. You have to really be on top of your game when you're reviewing someone else's work. And I learned a lot about the business side of things as well. Since I was mostly self-employed, I've only drawn a paycheck for 2 out of 37 years. Wow. The rest of that time, I've been self-employed. I've had employees at various times. I had a network of 4 appraisers that worked for me early on with an admin assistant. We had an office in Pasadena. So that the size of my firm has gone up and it has come back down. And since I've been specializing in more of the high-end work, I didn't need to have a big infrastructure. I was able to play things a little closer to the vest.
Phenomenal. And one of the wonderful things about the podcast is everyone has a different story about how they got to the industry, how they've gone through the industry, and where they're at now. Yours is clearly you're our first Beverly Hills appraiser. Beverly Hills appraiser than the Beverly Hill Billies, for those that can appreciate the old school reference. But nonetheless, sounds like
Hollywood. I'm in Santa Monica. I'm in Holmby Hills, Bel Air, Brentwood. I'm doing a lot of work with fire zones in the Palisades. Of course, Pasadena. I've appraised 3 of the most famous green and greens in Pasadena, which are they're 110-year-old, 120-year-old homes. That are some of the finest architecture you could imagine. So a lot of architectural background as well. That's why I like the residential side of things, because it's so interesting.
It is.
It's like appraising a Rembrandt or a Picasso. How do you put a value on a piece of fine art that takes the form of real estate, a residence? It's a real challenge. You have to dig deep into studying the history and what are the motivations of market participants buying these homes. So it's been a real fascinating ride.
So I'm just without words. You so nicely encapsulated so many concepts and thoughts together. I shall start back at the beginning. So here you are learning from this gentleman. And did you know you were only going to get to be with him for a year? Or was it just kind of like, surprise, Charles, today's the last day and it's all yours?
He actually disappeared from the scene prior to the year being up. We had a buy-sell agreement. I was going to so much a month. And he just really made himself very scarce. He got into another line of work completely. So I was on my own. He was available via phone. I called him and we talked, and I got to know some other appraisers along the way. I did a little fee work for some other fee shops. Just learned as I went. And just applied my own sense of right and wrong and common sense to obviously the coursework that I had taken, networking with clients, speaking, And back in the day before licensing, it was all about developing relationships with lenders. I would go to chief appraiser offices and drop off work samples, business cards, fee schedules. I did direct mailings. I got email lists for brokers, mortgage brokers and real estate brokers, and I would mass email these folks. Slowly but surely, I started to gain some traction with all those efforts.
And so going back to that early stage, because it was pre-licensing, for some people, they have no idea what we're talking about. What was it like in the Wild West of residential appraising in Beverly Hills?
Well, not just Beverly, but all over Southern California.
No, I understand. But like people know Beverly Hills. They might know Malibu, Santa Monica, but they're going to know Beverly Hills or Charles. They know Charles Baker, but they know Beverly Hills too.
We'll go with it. Yeah, let's just go with that. I'm good with it. And my limited exposure to other practitioners during that time frame was a bit of a Wild West atmosphere. Okay. There didn't seem to be a huge focus on standards. There was the clients freely try to influence me. If you get this value, we'll send you a lot more work. Just hit this one value.
Who hasn't heard that if you do any amount of residential? Any work in general, but it's so common in residential, more so even than commercial. But it happens a lot in commercial too, sadly.
Absolutely. And I always would take that with a grain of salt because typically those things never panned out. So I never took the bait. Yeah. I'd rather have my reputation intact than maybe get another 2 assignments from a client that's shady anyway. I don't want to deal with those clients. And of course, over the years, the business has gone through so many metamorphosi. Is that plural for metamorphosis? Licensing, obviously. And then we had the crash. We had Korea. We had the HVCC, the IPVV. It's an alphabet soup of regulation to try to rein in the abuses that were pretty commonplace. Yeah. Have they succeeded? Yeah, that's for another discussion.
Yeah. And so take us back. So you come in pre-licensing. This is the world of not 110, but 35 millimeter film for the most part. It's without so much of the technology that exists today. And you get to learn from someone who's made a career out of it. How far along, when you look at how it is for today, do people get in the industry versus for you back then? Did you get like 4 years of knowledge in 1 year, or did you get about 25% of what you really needed and you had to just learn on your own in the ensuing couple years after that in the early 90s? This was an interesting challenge that you and I both had to deal with. I came through the same kind of pre-licensing time.
Yeah, it's a good question. The two scenarios are positive. Did I get 4 years worth of experience in 1 year? I think it was a bit of a boot camp experience for me. So I got a lot of experience. I was like a sponge. I just soaked it up. I wanted to learn this business because I knew the music scene was not going to pan out for me. I knew that I needed to make a go with this. I was newly married, had a house, a child was on the way. I had to make this work. So I soaked it up like a sponge. So yes, I got a lot of input. I processed that input, metabolized that input. I turned it into action. I got better and better. And I had some mentors, not a lot, but I had some mentors along the way. And then affiliating with the society at first and taking coursework. I got to know some instructors along the way. Very early in my career, they had a big influence on me. And then from there, we can get into more recent years and how work has played out.
So one of the interesting challenges, I would assume, it's going to have to be an assumption because I don't know anything other than that, is the person that you knew that got you in wasn't the typical person that you interacted with. How did you actually meet with other professionals to learn and grow?
Yeah, this was through taking courses.
Okay.
And that's how I developed my appraiser network, was coursework, going to classes, sitting with these folks after class, having dinner. Some of these were institute or society events, and I wasn't a big part of that circle, obviously, because a big part of my early career, I was not affiliated with the institute. That didn't happen until about halfway through my career. And I had some good mentors, especially on the review appraiser side. When you're reviewing the work of other people, and the QC infrastructure is there, especially with Foster, even though they flamed out. Greg Hansen was a really good influence on me. Mike Cafaro, and there's some other folks that had review management companies that were very influential in my early years.
Got it. And so because you started out in Beverly Hills, you just started out in called an echelon of homes that most people may not even see in their whole career. But that was your proverbial sandbox. Most people are like, hey, sandbox, I got a little toy truck. You're like, I've got a sandbox too. Do you see how big that thing is? That's a starter home here for us. It's just a different world.
It was very early on. And like I said, I had to just, put all of the emotional reaction aside. I'm just meeting celebrities. I'm just there as an appraiser. I'm not there as I could tell you all kinds of stories there. But I also did a lot of work in more suburban, middle-class neighborhoods in the San Fernando Valley. A lot of my coursework involved doing field work in the Valley. So just regular houses. I did a lot of regular houses. For a while, I was doing a lot of work in South Central too, in challenging neighborhoods. But I learned how to just embrace that whole experience. And the fact that these folks maybe they're not living in Beverly Hills, but they're every bit as deserving of competent, high quality valuation work as any client. And it really put a lot of things in perspective for me. And it taught me gratitude as well.
When you talk about embracing the experience, I think that's a helpful one. What the word I'm associating with that is empathy, and that you either had that or you developed it, which gave you the capacity to work with a range of people, not just we'll call it, as you might, one tract of homes.
Absolutely. Like the same day, I remember the same day I'm doing an inspection in Beverly Hills, and that afternoon I'm going down to Compton to do another inspection. And it definitely puts it in perspective. In both cases, those folks deserve the very best that I can offer.
Yep.
Empathy is a good human trait to develop anyway, no matter what profession you're in, because you never know the next client that you're going to meet, what their needs are. You have to be able to understand and empathize with what their needs are.
That is a wonderful way to put it, because you mentioned especially some of the very unique homes you've been in, but even early on, unless I'm mistaken, in California is always special, but unless you were extra special, I don't remember any training in construction. I don't remember any training in finishes. I don't remember any training in attributes of properties. Now, maybe like you, there were things I was doing that gave me a ton of knowledge in that area, but boy, I didn't find it in this profession. How did you develop your knowledge?
Those are all of the intangible factors that makes residential valuation fascinating. Architecture.
Yeah.
Architectural detail, quality of construction. What makes one home better quality than another? Is it the architectural embellishments? Is it the massing? Is it so many of these things that obviously we're not taught? Well, the way I've learned it is just through volume, through inspecting thousands and thousands of properties, looking at construction cost breakdowns, blueprints. Over my career, I've appraised well over in excess of 10,000 houses. I've written well in excess of probably 16,000 reports, another few thousand review reports. It just comes through osmosis of doing the work. Also, I've been an investor. I've invested in real estate, and you pay attention to those things, what tenants want, what buyers want when you're doing a renovation. And also growing up, my folks were fortunate enough to have built 2 houses, and they paid attention to the progeny of these houses. So that was really fascinating as a kid growing up on a building site, which I did twice growing up.
Yeah, I've found there's no faster way. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I just haven't experienced it. There is no faster way to learn than to put your own money on the line. And then you're like, wait a minute. Is that really Ubatuba? Talk to me. That material there. I think that's just a fancy laminate. Oh, no, it's something else. I'm like, no, I think you're trying to pull a fast one on me. that's definitely not the case. You summed it up. Osmosis and doing the work, soaking it up is definitely how you get there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Walking through a lot of houses, sure.
And and you talk about that kind of, I'll refer to it as that sixth sense, that ability to arrive at a property or walk into a property, whatever type it may be. And there's just like a sense that I still find that photographs don't capture.
I couldn't agree more. Sure. Because it's all about volume and space. How does the space connect with you as a person? Flow, air, and light. Those are all components that are tangible. How do you put a number on those things? But you certainly feel them. A well-designed house just feels like putting on a glove that just fits perfectly. And a house that's wonky or funky or doesn't flow well, it just kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. You sense that. And I think from doing this, I think it's intuitive also for folks that have spent any time, even if you just appraised a few houses, you can sense that. And that's an emotion that you need to really pay attention to in your work. Sure. Because you're not just analyzing rents, a commercial property where you're looking at cap rates and rents and expenses.
Yeah, exactly.
Intangibles that relate to residential is what I just find interesting, honestly.
And such a good point, and I appreciate that. And just to help people get a sense, so you joined the profession in the late 80s, you live in the profession through the late 90s. How when you reflect on, in maybe, in this case, decade increments or decade tranches, we had starting, which the late 80s is really part of the 90s for you, and then you get to 2000 to basically the great financial crisis, up through and maybe all the way up to COVID, and then post that period of time. What were the biggest changes for you as a person in the profession in that first, say, rough decade up to about Y2K?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, my formative years were all about just learning and soaking up as much knowledge as I could, networking, and just building my portfolio out. I wasn't really a standout appraiser for that period of time. And then, of course, we had the financial crisis in the late 90s, I think right around 2000. Then we had 9/11. Of course, interest rates plummeted. I found myself having the best years ever doing refinance work, lender work. Was in a very good position with a colleague, not a colleague, but a contact that I had known for 12 years previously, which is why connections are so valuable, and you never know where those connections are going to lead. This particular contact had a mortgage company in the late 80s that I did work for, and she branched off and then she went to work for Wells Fargo Bank and became the top producer for Wells Fargo in the country.
Oh my gosh.
Broker. I don't know what her volume was, but this is back starting.
It was hundreds of millions of dollars. I actually follow those stats of the top 10 producers in the country.
Yeah, it's huge. She could pick up the phone and call John Stumpf, the CEO of Wells Fargo at the time. So I was in that direct line with her and all the private mortgage banking offices at Wells Fargo throughout Southern California. And that's really when I started doing the bulk of my work was focused on the higher end stuff. I remember doing a house in Brentwood Country Estates behind the gates. This gentleman built this mansion, and I was touring the house. He's explaining to me some of the architectural features. He had actually acquired the fireplace that had belonged to Napoleon Bonaparte at one time. Okay? Yeah. So these folks would go to Italy, they would go to France, they would go to some of these castles that had been remodeled or were being torn down, and would buy architectural artifacts from these properties and bring them to the States, incorporate them in their homes. So that really was a very eye-opening experience for me. And I've seen countless hundreds and hundreds, well over 1,000 homes that are in that category that are pretty just mind-blowing.
That is absolutely stunning. So that gets you kind of moving up towards, you touched on some significant things. There was a particular period in the late 90s. Then we obviously had Y2K. That was a very interesting thing. Then you talk about, good old 9/11. Some people don't even know what it was, sadly. I wish we had some of those times right now here in 2026. But
what's interesting is our profession, especially if you're doing lender work, it tends to benefit from when the economy is struggling a little bit, because the Fed, of course, responds, kicks interest rates down. COVID is a classic example. We'll never see that again with rates below 3%.
I hope we don't. Like you and I hope we live to never see that again. But if it does, we're in bad times.
I couldn't agree more. There's been cycles. I've been through quite a few of these cycles.
Yes.
Not only as an appraiser, but as a real estate investor. I kind of got hung out to dry a little bit in 2007, 2008 when the market
Hello.
crashed. Yeah.
We will have a separate episode to talk about real estate investing with Charles Baker's experience. Friends, you don't worry, season 13 is live and it's coming soon, but not today.
Not today. But as an appraiser, I navigated through that. It was a struggle. You just kind of push through, keep getting up every day and just trying to see the upside. See that, know that there are going to be better times ahead, because there always are. Always. You can count on that. But you have to get it in your head, and you have to actually go out and manifest them. You can't just sit back and wait for those times to come to you.
I can definitely appreciate that. When you mentioned about that first decade, how was your second decade in the industry different from your first decade?
First decade was doing just a lot of basic residential work, pre-licensing, and then licensing came along. This was 92. I had 2 years with Foster Asley learning the review work pretty heavily. That was kind of like a boot camp for me. Good experience. Yeah. And then I was doing review work for other organizations up until about 97, 1998. That's when I decided to pivot back into regular full appraisal work. Started coming up the ladder, the food chain, with my contact at Wells Fargo, spidering out my contacts with other entities and other private mortgage banking offices, and just built my book of business around that and my cachet, and it just grew steadily. It was a slow, steady march for me.
And then, how did that? Yeah, go ahead, because that's so from like kind of the getting started and really getting in a building, which is that first decade, second decade being roughly Y2K and that whole experience of 9/11, all the way up to about the great financial crisis, and then coming out of that, that's a whole different period. How was your involvement in the industry different from that time frame of, say, post great financial crisis, the recession, up to, say, pre-COVID?
80% of all businesses fail within 5 years, according to the US Census Bureau. With so many roles and responsibilities that must be managed and have nothing to do with appraisal reports, is it any surprise that it's hard to keep up, much less having a sense of peace, stability, and profitability that comes from growing your business? Given all of this, you might already be thinking about exiting your business one day. Don't miss the limited opportunity to work with Michael, a real estate expert and professional coach. He has worked with more than 300 owners and entrepreneurs to find their highest and best use by solving problems that reach their most important goals. Compress decades of learning into days by working with Michael. Michael is famous in real estate and business coaching. With his help, you can accelerate your growth, increase your quality of life, and earn more money, all while ultimately doing less. Michael helps you not just grow your business, but also find new purpose in it and in your life. If you're ready to take control instead of being controlled, contact him on LinkedIn or email him at michaelh@paru.com.
Well, let's go back to 2006, 2005, 2006. The market's on fire. It's crazy, stupid mortgages are being made, negative amortization. I actually had 4 properties that I had invested in, and I got 4 negative amortization mortgages from Countrywide. And I remember in 2006 going, wait a minute, this is not sustainable. This is not good. I refied out of those. I ended up selling those properties. As an appraiser, I realized that, when the shit hits the fan, I better be designated. So now that's what really launched me on the Appraisal Institute track, getting designated. Got my demonstration report in, made sure I had all my classes in. 2009, I'm handed my designation by Steve Fontes at the LA County Market Trend Seminar in LA. And I look out over a room of about 200 people. I didn't know a soul, except for maybe 2. Well, I was nervous. I was also very excited. And I knew that this was a seminal moment for me, being a designated appraiser with the Institute. And I had never looked back. And I've gotten to know virtually everyone in this business through my affiliation with the Institute. So that takes us up to about 2009, 2010.
Love that. And then
Well,
how did the work that you're doing in the industry change after the recession?
Well, after the recession, we started coming out of it. Well, in about 2010, 2011, I was doing mostly lender work at the time. But I was also volunteering with the Institute, with our local chapter. I came up the branch. We have 3 branches at the SoCal chapter. I came up through I think it was Eastern branch. I started hosting luncheons, bringing speakers in, just expanding my name within the business. Developing those connections, developing my voice, if you will, on the residential side. And then I was selected to come up the education committee. That was a 3-year commitment. And then I was selected to come up the board of directors, the chairs. And that started in 2015. So 2015, 16, 17, and 18. 2018 was like my pinnacle year with the chapter. I was chapter president.
Oh, congratulations. Thanks for your service. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it was quite a ride. And an LDAC discussion leader. I was chair of the government relations committee for the Institute. I was on regional committees.
Wow.
That just provided, it was a lot of hard work, obviously, a lot of moving parts, a lot of balls in the air. But that provided me with the juice to just expand my book of business, expand my visibility, and start what's called this process, which is a key, differentiation. And I want to emphasize that word. Because if you're not able to, let's go back to 2000, differentiate yourself. Mm-hmm. You're not gonna stand out. And then I started, and I'm speaking now. I've written so many seminars and presentations, and I've been giving those for the Institute, for the IAAO, for the IRWA, and other organizations, and I've been traveling and speaking out. So anyway, it's just been this organic, path for me, and it's been a tremendous ride. Yeah,
man. I really appreciate you sharing that, Charles.
Well,
an interesting thing that I think really fits for you, I think it does fit for most of our guests as well, but yours especially because of getting involved early on. And if I heard you correctly, and please advise me if I did not, that you meet this individual, you end up going to work with this individual, you end up signing an agreement with this individual to acquire his practice. And within about a period of a year, now you own that practice and you've never looked back, is what I think I heard you say.
Well, that's basically it. It. Let's go. Just a random occurrence. But it could not have worked out better. Any one of us that have been in the business long enough have been through these ups and downs. We've been through crises. We've been through personal challenges, financial challenges. You just got to dig down deep and stick with it and dig yourself out and know, if you just are able to self-motivate, change how you focus. So there's what's called the triad, and I'm gonna give credit to Tony Robbins. I've done so many of his seminars over the years. I've actually been in Tony Robbins seminar rooms, live rooms with him and his speakers.
Oh, you've been there. I've never done any of his work live.
Yeah. Crazy. I've done 24 days in his seminar rooms. Unleash the Power Within twice, Date with Destiny once, that's in Florida, Life Wealth Mastery in Fiji, that was 6 days, Leadership Academy in San Diego, and some other stuff. Anyway, it's called the triad. You can change everything, change your state by what you focus on. Mm-hmm. Okay. The language that you use to describe and then your physiology. What do you do with your body? A lot of us just, okay, another day, I got to write another report.
Yeah, that's true.
No, snap out of it. You get to write. Life is not what happens to you. Life is all about what you get to do.
Yep.
Okay. This is a gift, my friend. And as long as you look at it that way and you reframe it in that capacity, in that way, and you change what you focus on, you change your language, and you change your physiology, it will make a tremendous difference in your career and in your personal life.
That is very well said, which really leads up to the question I was hoping to be able to ask you. And that was, so many people, myself included, came into the industry and started getting paid to do work.
Yeah.
At some point, I moved from being in the industry to being a professional in the industry. When you look back over the in this case, coming up on 4 decades of being in the industry. What, like, where in a particular decade was there a particular experience you're like, yeah, I'm a professional. I'm not just doing the work, but I'm a professional.
Mm-hmm. I think you're talking about the difference between being a vocational appraiser versus a true professional appraiser. And
we will use those words, Charles.
Yeah, I think and I want to credit Steve Smith. Well, let's because he
great man.
Talked about this for years and years, and it is so true. I think the transition for me started to occur when. That's a good question. I can tell you a seminal moment for me.
All right.
My first legal case. Okay, in 2014, I get a call from a guy named Barry Alperin. Rest in peace. He's an older gentleman, the old guard. He was probably, I don't know how old he was at the time, but close to 70. He had served at the local chapter for years and years and years, and everyone knew him. He had this big handlebar wax mustache, and he was quite a character. Well, he brought me aboard a legal case that he was involved with in Malibu, a very complex case, but he hired me because he knew that I had a tremendous amount of experience in this market. And to me, that phone call is what did it for me. Okay, I am a professional. If I'm getting a request from a gentleman to affiliate and to get paid, I would have paid him to work with him on this case, but he was paying me.
Oh.
Well, then I realized, okay, I'm there. I'm a professional. I still have a lot to learn, and even to this day, I still have a lot to learn. But I feel like I've got a lot to give too. And the more I give, the more I learn, the more I benefit, and hopefully the community benefits as well. But that really was it for me. Yeah.
And I am sure that one of the benefits of technology and our more recent migration to video podcasts versus audio podcasts is you actually get to see the experience of Charles Baker, not just hear it. And not that you couldn't hear just the audio version for those of you driving the car and you're not watching this because you're keeping your eyes on the road, that you can feel Charles's passion. You can feel his interest and engagement. You can hear his desire for the industry and the work that he does, even if you can't see him. So it's still quite valuable. And Charles, what I would ask is, did you come into the industry this way because you'd been a heavy metal rock star and it flowed from you like talented music? Or did you have to learn how to be outgoing? And reach out and make requests and ask for introductions. And you mentioned networking a number of times, especially in that first decade.
That's a good question, Mike. I think for me, let's go back to my formative years, going way back to when I was like 12, 13 years old. I was drumming, I was playing, and I was acted in theater. So I had experience being on stage.
Oh, okay.
I kind of knew how to, I developed an ability to connect with people. Part of it is just nerves, just getting out of your own way. People don't want perfection. They just want real. Just be real. And I tell people this, the way to change minds is to change hearts first. Yeah. And the way you change hearts is by connecting with people at a human, at a one-on-one, on a real level. So just be real. So I learned this through some acting, through performing, through being on stage, and trying to connect with people. And it wasn't a heavy metal band, it was more of a pop group. But I did have some hair back in those days. Like Michael Hobbs, who's still got hair.
It's possible. We can do a little hair off.
Let's
make the video launch even more exciting.
Oh man. I decided to lose that.
Hey, your maintenance is lower than mine. What can I tell you?
That is very true. But there was a time when back in 1992, when I was appraising and I was in a group and we had a CD out. We were playing all over the place. I did have hair a little ways down here. I put it in a ponytail back here, and I would go out and do inspections with a ponytail.
You were a heartthrob. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you got to sport it. But finally, it all came off.
Yeah. Look how much time you save in your week. You don't even need a brush or a comb. You're just like.
There's more and more of guys like me out there in the business. Not many. Let's go back to two things. Like appraisers generally, especially guys, have got a pretty decent head of hair. I'm the exception. So I'm out there for all the bald guys, the bald and the beautiful.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That may have to be the title of this episode is The Bald and the Beautiful. I'm going to write that down here in my notes. That's a good one. And you mentioned about the specialness, and I would say, Charles, you are definitely special. Not just because I do know you, but because of the market and markets that you've served, as well as the progression in your career. And it's very clear in chatting with you that you do a lot of assignments that maybe other people don't get access to or don't get selected for. And so at this point in your career, spanning multiple decades, when was it an intentional choice? And if the answer is yes, when was it moving from lending to non-lending?
Like I said, it was that phone call, and then gradually over the course of several years, well, back to 2000, there was actually one case I was involved with. It was a tax appeal case.
Okay.
It was very complicated. And I remember going up against the assessors and the assessment appeals board. They ended up ultimately ruling in my favor. I did another case very similar to that. And there was another appraiser who happens to be a good friend of mine who was on the other side of that case. He was so impressed with my work product. We got to keep in mind, competency is key. You have to be very good at what you do. You've got to produce reports that are rigorously, well, let's go back to 2000, fact checked, and go through the whole scope of work, all of that stuff that we learn with all of our courses with the Institute. There's no shortcuts there, right? But if you produce a report that is rigorous and it's thorough and it's solid, this particular individual, this appraiser, saw my work, was so impressed, and I get a lot of referrals from him. I get actually my affiliation with the Institute. Honestly, there are not a lot of residential appraisers affiliated with the Institute. Not a lot of SRAs. The ratio is, I don't know what it is.
And I experienced that. I'm with you.
I speak at these events and I say, so how many residential people? And out of 120 hands, maybe 3 go up.
Oh wow.
Differentiation. And that's one of the reasons why my affiliation with the Institute has been very fruitful for me. I get referrals from MAIs all the time.
Got it.
Well,
yeah, I love that.
There's a tremendous amount of residential litigation business out there. There's so much. Aside from trust and divorce and estate work, where you've got parties that are in court and they need someone to opine about a complicated residential valuation matter. There's so much out there.
Yep.
Well, I'm just scratching the surface, but that's, like I said earlier, that's 90% of my business right now.
And I very much appreciate that. And I think that's helpful, especially for those that don't realize that the industry is broad and deep. There are a lot of people, of course, that are in just a few of the food lines, so to speak, for assignments and work, if you will. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone would love to have the #1 producer in the country at Wells Fargo being like the individual that says, dude, we love you and you take care of my clients and do a good job, do all the USPAP stuff. And
the key there is the relationship that was fostered and developed and nurtured years before. You never know where these contacts will pan out and where they'll end up and how they may benefit you. As isolated as we are in this business, it's still a relationship business. And to develop a relationship, it requires visibility, trust, and differentiation. And those are some key terms that I'll be using in my Appraisal Institute segment at the spring conference in Nashville. And we can talk about that a little bit as well, but I'm excited to be
I think that's helpful. And thanks for mentioning that. Visibility is a factor. There's multiple ways to get there. Trust is huge. And trust is both a noun and a verb as you use it. And it's something that is built. To a certain degree, you can try and buy it, but it really is built over time and through repetition. And as you touch on, differentiation is the fastest way to lead to, I find, a very fulfilling and also financially rewarding space, as opposed to just competing, to use tech terms, in the red ocean versus the blue seas. The red ocean being shark infested and a lot of death and carnage, and competing for like the lowest prices, as opposed to that blue ocean where you just get to swim and it's beautiful and peaceful and you name your price, like the Charles Baker kind of price. That kind of thing.
You mentioned trust, and I just want to touch on that briefly. Of course, Dr. Stephen Covey wrote a book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The 3 personal traits that he mentions, one of them is trust. And to be worthy of trust, you have to be trustworthy.
Yes.
That starts first. And then then people can start trusting you. But you have to have a trustworthy constitution about you, about everything you do. Well, none of us are infallible. I've learned from making mistakes along the way.
Yep.
Well, I think I've landed at a place now in my life where I feel like I'm pretty trustworthy. And so I get the trust from clients and end users.
And you started at a time, like there was no, you started at a time, there was no internet. Like people are like, there wasn't the internet? You're like, there was no internet. There was electricity because he had to be able to take care of that main that he had.
That came on a little later for me.
And so you had old school
water wheel back in those days.
Yeah, the water wheel. That keep it spinning, delivery thing by carrier pigeon, all that stuff. And occasionally the guy showed up on his horse and his horse-drawn wagon to drop off those photographic plates. And because yours was of a different era, it's still quite pertinent and powerful today. I'd say even more powerful today than it used to be. How was it that you took on the establishment of relationships? Because a lot of people can benefit from what you were doing back in the 90s, because it still works today. It takes a little more effort because people are hiding out behind like Zoom and in their home office, but person to person, hand to hand combat, one-on-one getting to know people makes a difference.
Well, this platform, Zoom, I think it's valuable. It's one way to establish relationships. Hosting events, going to realtor meetings, teaching. There's so many ways. Kiwanis Club, all these other clubs. What's the one? Masters. Okay, I did that for a little bit. Tremendous. You learn how to get up in front of a crowd and keep them occupied, keep them entertained, and keep them informed and educated for a period of time. Connections can spider out as well. You just never know. Yes, it requires heavy lifting. It's hard work. But it's possible. Tony Robbins talks about the 2% trajectory. If you just change the arc of what you're doing in your life by 2%, over time, that 2% widens to the point where you can emerge in a very influential, successful, prosperous life. Doesn't take a huge shift, but over time, it makes a huge difference.
And I think that's a great point. The whole 1 degree, 2 degree shift, and how, since you are on the West Coast, and if you were flying to the East Coast, or in that case, I think you mentioned flying to Nashville, if you're only off by 2 degrees,
well, let's go back to 2.
You're going to end up in like Atlanta and not Nashville, flying across country. People just, many times, myself included, so often, just miss by just being off by a little bit and then just staying off course. Well, oh my goodness, no surprise that where I got to was not what I thought would happen when I started it out.
And that's why it's important to analyze and self-reflect and think about, okay, did these things, these action items, what did they contribute? Have they borne fruit? If not, you pivot, you switch, you try other things. Well, I think it's better, experiment and try these other things, networking opportunities. Something will bear fruit. It will. Not everything, but some of those efforts will bear fruit. So I think, especially in the beginning, for folks that want to learn how or want to branch out, take advantage of every speaking opportunity, every possible opportunity to network. Take advantage of all of it, because you never know where it's going to end up.
So given your experience, some people are going to be like, hey, what would I speak about? This is one of those, and I totally just forgot what it's called. It's called the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge is we don't remember many times what it was like not to know what we know. So when you mention a number of those groups, like what would be topics I'm referring to, of value that to get started?
That's a good point. When I was early working for the branch, at the branch level with the Institute, our SoCal chapter, I wasn't necessarily the one speaking, but I was charged with finding speakers and bringing them in and introducing them. So I was a gateway individual way back in those early days.
Okay.
And I was able to get up in front of the audience and introduce this expert. I remember we had some folks from Data Master come in to speak. We had some folks from the local MLS. Later on, I put together a full-day residential symposium for our chapter. And I brought in a number of speakers. We had a Zoom speaker from Fannie Mae. We had local, MLS folks. We had technology folks. But just by being the organizer in those cases and being the sort of master of ceremonies, that was another way to differentiate myself. And that was a really wonderful exercise in building my networking skills. By inviting other people to speak. Most people love the opportunity to help and to speak and to share their knowledge. One of the things I think we're going to be facing as the number of appraisers diminish, we are losing this legacy body of knowledge. Older folks that are retiring. They're not handing the baton off to the next generation. And I think that is criminal. There's so much knowledge that that's going to be put on a shelf somewhere and forgotten about. I just think it's terrible. So I think, this mentor-mentee, relationship that the Institute and other organizations are trying to develop, I think is incredibly valuable. And as I get older, I want to be able to pass on as much as I know to the next generation. I've done that through my trainee. It's been very gratifying for me. So that's something else that I think we need to focus on as well. Because if we just expect the next generation to learn on their own without the benefit of all of our legacy knowledge, then they're going to do things completely, differently, which, creative destruction, that always happens. But I think there's something to be said for passing on, our legacy body of knowledge.
It's a huge factor. And I'm so glad you touched on that, because I think not just this industry, but so many others are facing that. And it's been a take that 2% trajectory. It's been going on for such a long time with so little to stem the tide. And then suddenly you go back to work from researchers like Clayton Christensen, which talk about crossing the chasm, where technologies or advancements in other industries that are completely unrelated to said industry literally jump the proverbial, in this case, could be the ocean, think of it like a big river, whatever it might be. They get to the other side and it shows up like a devastating force because it has matured so much in other areas before it got here. And the people are like, what happened? How did this occur? And it's been growing in that space for a while. And you referenced it a little earlier. I'm bringing it in now. We're seeing that with the use of the ability to actually use statistics. Been there for a long time. The ability to actually use programs that can analyze large amounts of data. The ability for programs to actually come up with answers that humans can't do in the same amount of time. And now we're dealing with the influx of AI, which moves way beyond modeling. And so how are you seeing the experience as a professional who's differentiated, being an insulator to these other technologies that are crossing over into this profession?
It's an interesting way you pose the question. As an insulator, I am embracing all of this technology to the extent that I can. It literally would be 3 full-time jobs for me to fully absorb all the tools that are out there. I'm working with Roy Meyer on learning more about this sort of thing. Calvin Cummings, some really fascinating things, and some other people. I want to give those gentlemen a lot of credit. So I'm using basically 3 tools, AI tools, and what they are doing is helping me to analyze lots of data to try to make sense of it, interpret it. I'm still plugging in all of the inputs and driving the analysis. This is what I want to do. Here's the data. Tell me how your conclusion of this data relates back to what I'm trying to do. Chat, of course, is great for analyzing legal documents and pleadings. Arguments. Another tool I'm using is Alexi.com.
I don't know that. What is it?
Alexi.com is like LexisNexis.
Really?
But it's a lot less expensive. It's not $800 a month. It's $99 a month. And you can ask it to find all appellate legal cases that have to do with, easements or water contamination, or a case that I was working on involved a trespass, a residential trespass of a developer who needed to do a taking, but did not inform the property owner of the taking. And as a result, the benefit to the trespasser was tremendous. I mean, we're talking millions and millions of dollars. save for that trespass, this property would not have been worth much of anything. So I did a lot of legal research into that part of the law, the regulations. Well, I was able to produce a document with summarizing all these legal cases. Really good stuff.
Wow.
Well, has it made me a better appraiser? Well, I think it's made me able to absorb greater amounts of information in a compressed time frame. But it's critical that you fact check, double check what the output is and see how relevant it is. Well, the temptation is just to put it all in there, to have a report that would ordinarily be maybe 50 pages and make it 500 pages. No, that's not necessary. Well, it's got to be relevant to the problem that you're trying to solve for the client. Well, these tools are very useful and valuable.
No, I definitely appreciate that. You mentioned you're using 3 tools. So Alexi's one. What are the other 2?
The chat. Well, and the third one is Julius.
Don't know that. What is it?
It's an app. It's an app that's wonderful with data. You throw in very complex downloads of data, huge data frames, and you ask it to, okay, summarize this data, pull GPS coordinates, extract, let's narrative comments as it relates to views or some other property characteristics, and try to parse the data and tell me, what is the data telling me?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it just goes beyond Excel. It's able to execute very quickly. So that's a very impressive tool as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that.
Sure.
Wow. So
just like Excel, if you go back to when we were using fax machines and calculators, it's just another tool. That's all it is.
That's a great way to put it. That is a great way to put it. Much like one of our recent guests was reminding us about Lotus 123.
The floppy disks.
A floppy disk, baby. The big floppy disks, not the little ones.
They were really floppy.
They were truly floppy, not the hard ones, the 3.5 inch. But at this point, you've spent a lot of your time, a lot of effort giving back. You mentioned serving in a chapter role. You mentioned speaking for different organizations. You made reference to here in 2026, you're speaking at a national event as opposed to a local one. Why do you do it, Charles?
Appreciate the question, Michael. It just feeds something within me.
Got it.
I like to see the light bulbs go off. I'd like to see those heads go, yeah, I get it. That makes sense. Connecting with these people. Trying to change their minds by changing their hearts, by relating to them in some way. And just giving back. I'm not going to be doing this for a long time still. I'm 63. I'm probably going to be...
Dude, you're not stopping anytime soon.
I'm not? Okay, Michael said it. I know. No, I plan to... I've got another 4 or 5 year trajectory of building and scaling up a bit. I've got some pretty big plans here.
Okay.
But 10 years from now, I'd like to be done. But I'd also like to have downloaded as much of what I know to the next generation as possible. I just want to help people. Because I'm a guy who started just doing friggin' bank work. I didn't have a huge education when I started. And if someone like me can do this, so you can do it too.
There's hope for me, Charles. I appreciate that.
You can do it too. Just get out of your own way. Give yourself permission. Give yourself some grace. And just give back. Like I said, I've said this before, people don't expect perfection. So a lot of people they just are so paranoid about stepping up and getting on a stage because they feel like they're not prepared. And if you have that feeling, you never will be prepared. Yeah. It's not about preparation. It's just about stepping up. That's it.
It's a great way to put it. Yeah. It's a wonderful way. So given everything that you've seen, everything you've heard, everything you've experienced, Charles, what are you looking forward to in the next 3 to 5 years?
Oh, let's see. What am I looking forward to? I'm looking forward to, of course, scaling up a bit more, maybe training another couple of people, doing some traveling. Let's go back to some more real estate investing.
I love it.
Enjoying life at this stage. You get to a point where you've worked most of your life and you just want to enjoy the fruits of your labor, physical or while I'm still able to climb mountains, hike, and take cruises, and just see the world. There's so much out there. We think our little orbit is our world. And from a psychological perspective, it is. But it's just very small. It's like the Institute. We've got 10, 12,000 members of the Institute, but it's still a very small organization in the broad scheme of things compared to realtors and brokers and other professional organizations. It's helpful to just keep that perspective and expose yourself to a lot, just as much as possible. It's a big world out there.
Sure is. Charles, man, we appreciate you taking some time. I know you got a lot going on. Obviously, all those speaking engagements, all that waiting list of clients, people that want you to come and handle their Benedict Canyon property on the way up to Jay Leno. Say hello to him when you see him.
I will say hi to Jay Leno. Yes, I know. He's got his big parking garage. Well, we'll have a we'll talk about some of the folks I've met along the way.
That'd be fun stuff. That's fun stuff.
Real quick, I did meet Sally Field once.
Oh,
she had a house in Malibu, and just the kindest woman. And she had a whole row of Emmy Awards on her fireplace mantle, and just a sweetheart. This kind of diminutive woman, just really just a force of nature. And Pat Benatar, Neil Girardo, they had a house in Malibu as well. Just a wonderful couple. Yeah, I could just name all kinds of things.
I can only offer this contribution to your in-person experience, and that is, my wife is a big fan of live music. Pat Benatar was on. Pat Benatar was part of the show at Wrigley Field that included, I want to say it was like Steve Miller Band, Motley Crue, and Def Leppard. And I got to tell you, and that was a really good set.
Wow. Okay.
I was surprised. I knew most of her stuff, but I was like, man, you sound good. Like some of the other people, you're like, you probably shouldn't be up there, but it was good stuff.
That's cool. That's great.
Charles, thanks for joining us for this wonderful episode of Perusing's Appraisers on Purpose podcast.
Michael, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Look forward to it. And I look forward to our special episode in season 13 about investing. That's a whole nother fun topic we get to get into.
All right, brother.
All right, buddy.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Perusing's Appraisers on Purpose. We hope you enjoyed learning from the amazing professional paths and achievements of our beloved guests. Before we go, please subscribe on your listening channel, Spotify, LinkedIn, YouTube, and other podcast channels to hear more from appraisers and valuers regarding their life and their work. After you drop a comment below, who is one friend and peer you can generously share this episode with? If you have any suggestions or questions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us a message on LinkedIn and we'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks again for listening, and until we're together again for the next session of Perusing's Appraisers on Purpose, create the change that you seek.